Good evening once again and welcome. It's Monday night, it's 8 o'clock and it's time for our usual Monday review show. This is the show where we discuss all things refereeing and referees, be it from yellow cards, red cards given or not given, and decisions taken, and in some instances, decisions not taken. If you'd like to take part in the show, you're more than welcome. Just send in your comment and we'll do our best to accommodate you. There's a little thing down there on the bottom right-hand side of your screen where you can make your comments, and we look forward to that. I'm delighted to be joined once again by my regular guest, former Premier League referee, former FIFA referee, and former head of the PGMOL, and the man credited with introducing GLT, Goal Line Technology, which has proven to be enormously successful over the years. So, Keith Hackett, thanks very much again, Keith, for joining me. Great. There was an incident, Keith, recently last week in the Wolves, or was it the other way? City versus Wolves. I can't remember now who was at home.
City Wolves.
So there should have been a red card, you reckon, and there wasn't.
Yeah, I was rather surprised and disappointed because for me, this is the type of challenge that the referee should be able to detect. This was Ryan Aït-Nouri of Wolves, who what he did was he stretched out his leg. He was moving forward and his heel rolled on the top of the ball, and then flat of the foot stood showing, went directly into the Manchester City player's leg. I mean, it was a clear, serious foul play challenge. It endangered the safety of opponent. You know, when we look at the word force, we know that in mathematics, force is about distance and weight, and therefore, when you've got the whole of the body coming in a downward motion with a foot, the weight is there, and it's travel for 2 or 3 foot, so it's got to be excessive force in that situation.
Let me play devil's advocate here. Yeah. If his foot went over the ball, could he justifiably claim that at that stage he didn't have control and his foot went over the ball and therefore there wasn't much he could do? Could he claim that? I'm sure he might claim it, but is it just?
I think look, it's a good point. I mean, the first thing to say in football is it's about the spirit of the game and the player having a responsibility for the health and safety of his opponent. This is a team game. You know, we're not at war. We're playing a sport. Yes, players do get injured, but the challenge here was very clearly someone with a degree of malice, right, using the ball as a decoy. Doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it ought to be detected by the referee. Now, it's not detected by the referee, and of course, what have we got? We've got VAR, and VAR can look at the same shot that I looked at, and to then make that judgment. And my view, and it's my view, but it's followed by many, I think Jamie Carragher at the TV said very clearly this was a red card challenge. It was red card for me. I don't think there was any doubt about it. And I think it's wrong for some spokesperson to come out when that challenge is made to justify why a red card is not being given without quoting law. Because when you have an incident like that, the first thing that the referees have generally is a good knowledge of the laws of the game. Mm-hmm. And here it's about ensuring that that type of challenge has no place in the game, and that it is punished accordingly with a red card. And it goes into that box of serious foul play. Now, for me, and you're right, you can play devil's advocate, but if you're going to play the ball, right, and you might stumble, then where does the foot land? Was there any, the Bournemouth we discussed last week, Eve Allenson, this challenge where he slipped going in to that challenge, but there was no real contact. There was no damage. This one was a potential leg breaker, and so you have to look in the hole. And then why do we talk about endangering the safety of an opponent? When someone challenges for the ball, you can't use the ball as an excuse. You can play the ball and then take the man. And I think this is sometimes the media thinking, well, he's played the ball, so he can't foul anybody.
Yeah, and that's a regular comment I hear.
Yeah.
Not only commentators who may or may not have played football themselves, but the pundits.
Yeah.
Alan Smith is one, and Gary Neville is another, just to name two, and there are others. But they all say, but he got the ball. And that they seem to use that as justification for murderous attempts and leg-breaking attempts on players. Once they get the ball, they seem to think that justifies the actual challenge itself. And a big one there, Keith, has just come to me now, is the trailing leg.
Yeah.
If you don't get him with the front leg, the trailing leg is always there as backup.
Well, I mean, you make a good point, because that is when the player can actually, be clearing the ball, and then he's clattered with the other leg. Yeah. So I think when young referees are looking to enhance their career, become better officials, then what they need to do, I think, is have this library where they examine decisions and incidents, and then draw from, ideally, the senior players in the game, and seek advice. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, this is in the box of red cards for me, because the thing is, endanger the safety of the opponent. When the boot with the studs showing land on the lower leg, starting off at the high leg and then lower leg, then for me, that's not the game of football that we want to see. We want to see skill, and we want to see players playing in a responsible manner. Yeah. However, against that, when you have that Bournemouth incident where, there were two incidents in that game. One was the red card incorrectly given, which was appealed and rightly turned over. The referee got it wrong. In that same game, there was a Manchester United player cautioned when there was no offence whatsoever, nowhere near an offence. But that wasn't overturned because a yellow card cannot be appealed. And for me, that's an injustice in the game.
How much attention is paid to these kind of things by the people at the top in the PGMOL, the instructors, the mentors, the coaches? I mean, you are there and you're in charge of the PGMOL. Are the referees called into meetings to try and get some kind of uniformity on what is and what is not a red card offence?
Yes. I mean, whether this is happening at the moment, I must say my view is, for what it's worth, I think I was very fortunate to have a number of quality coaches who were proper coaches, trained, if you like, in the game. I'm thinking of people like Roger Dilks, Trevor Simpson, the late Trevor Simpson, and others who were skillful referees. Roger Dilks had played at a professional level, so he was able to coach honestly. And what I did with coaches was that they worked with a small group of referees, so they gained credibility themselves. And there was I'm sure behind the scenes, a lot of open discussion because of respect given to each other. I would call meetings every couple of weeks, 3 days long. We would review the game. We would have a lot of information from Prozone. And then if we took a challenge of that nature, we would play it on the screen, the big screen with all the referees and sometimes the assistant referees sitting in the room. We'd ask the referee to talk us through the decision. How did he see it? How did he come to making this decision? Now, this wasn't just poor decisions. There was also a balance of excellent decisions where perhaps advantage had been played. How did he materially affect that decision? At what point did he decide to play an advantage? What was his cognitive skills like? So we would take this particular challenge and we would play openly, and we would have a discussion as a group of referees. And yes, I might be the catalyst of the debate. Justify that particular call. Justify in your own mind why there isn't a yellow card or why is there a red card. I would try desperately not to lead it, but they knew that it was on the screen and we were looking at it. And then we'd have an open discussion. You know, we had someone like Rob Styles, brilliant knowledge of the laws of the game, absolute in-depth knowledge of the laws of the game. And then you had the likes of Paul and Halsey, Webb and Clattenburg, Durkin, and others would openly discuss that particular incident. And we would have, with Prozone, we could examine the position of the referee. You know, we've talked before about the process of refereeing: to see, to recognize, to think and act is a process. So, you know, if you don't see, then you can skew the decision.
Yeah.
So we might even talk about positioning. We might look at the film clip of distance the referee is from the incident, because we had all that information to bring up. The one thing that we would do is we'd go out the room agreeing about whether that was correct decision or wrong, and what we would do in the future. And then what we would do is I would compile those. And we actually, at one stage, produced a DVD that we circulated to all the clubs, to all referees at grassroots level. And the DVD said, here's a box, and in that box is about 15 careless challenges for which the sanction is a free kick or a penalty kick. We'd have the next box in terms of reckless challenges. And then we'd have the extreme ones of red cards. I even, when I put the clips, I would play the music. So, for example, yellow cards, we would have Coldplay, Yellow. Background information so that they absorb psychologically the decision-making process.
Very good.
Or, you know, all Red Eyes for the red card would be the song. So we would link, and what we're effectively saying, look, these are what we say is cast iron, foul, yellow, red. And of course, if you look at the scenario of the laws of the game, there's a line, isn't there? There's a line that, you know, which has if you look at 3 boxes and you draw lines that separate each box, those lines thicken between what is reckless and what is reckless endangering the safety of an opponent. And here you can have a message of a different interpretation. You know, you have referees with personality.
Yeah.
You have different referees. Some would be quite quick with a red card and others not. And you might get that within the group. So within the group discussion, you might have 6 or 7 saying it's a red card, move on. And then it would be justify why it's a red card. And you would have one referee at one side of the room, another close by, having a fairly heated debate, getting their side across.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, it was a stimulating debate. There are some referees, and I think Howard Webb in his book that he wrote didn't like that process. So if he didn't like it then, it may not happen now. But the old scenario then is if there was still some doubt, that message would then be reinforced with the coaches.
Yeah.
I'm
just thinking, I'll just remind people you're watching the review show. This is where we talk all things refereeing, and I'm joined by my regular guest, Keith Hackett. The whole issue, Keith, that many people keep crying out for is consistency. Now, I know it's very, very difficult. As you've said many times, these are subjective decisions made by the referee on the day and at the time. But you could get another referee who may not be standing in that, or may not be in that position, maybe a different position, and therefore he might give a different decision based on his opinion on what he saw. How is it, or is it at all possible to get consistency on refereeing decisions?
I think it's a very good point. I think that we have to, first of all, look at that first element of the decision-making process, which is to see. And you're on a field of play with 20 of those players. I've been ignoring the goalkeeper because they've got restricted movement generally. You've got 20 players who are moving around and can block your vision very easily. So the first aspect in terms of professionalizing referees and young referees that listen to this show as well is, one, it's great to say, I'm keeping fit because I'm doing 5 miles, 10 miles, I'm on a treadmill and all that goes. That's not the game of football that we know. The game of football is about explosive sprinting, changing of direction, and the kicking of the ball can, within a second, a millisecond, can put you 15, 20 yards plus out of position. So the development of a referee is much about reading the game and developing your cognitive skills. Better referees see things before they happen. And so as a consequence, this is why Kalina was a very good referee, because he had that excellent reading of the game with anticipation of what is going to happen next.
Yeah.
And so as a consequence, the shortfall where you've got referees who haven't yet developed that ability, because you gain it over years, you start to talk about the ideal positioning, the ideal method of flow path on the field of play. Of course, it used to be corner flag to corner flag.
Yeah,
it's no longer, because the game has quickened up. You can't go to the corner flags. Yeah. So what you're doing is you're going corner of one penalty area to the opposite corner of the next penalty area. And the ideal, for those of you that are going to go into training, those that listen to the program, referees, you really should be in a straight line working at getting from penalty area to penalty area in 11 seconds. And if you can meet if you can meet that requirement, right, it will help you to overcome becoming detached from play. When you become detached from play, you don't get the vision of the incident.
And that's from a standing start, by the way.
Yes.
Nice comment here from Don Harris, who's a regular listener and contributor to the show. He says, "Evening, Dr. Errol and Keith. Does the Leicester City game where the referee was injured, during the Leicester City game where the referee was injured and Jamie Vardy took the initiative to blow the referee's whistle to stop the game, what's your view on this unusual incident?"
Yeah. Well, I praised Jamie Vardy. I praised him for his immediate action, because this was a head injury sustained by the referee. I think he was almost unconscious. First of all, I think it's a great pity because David Webb was doing his first Premier League game in the middle. Surprising, given that he's 49 years old. But nonetheless, he had a playoff game, and I thought he refereed it really well. So he was given a chance, and he got injured. So the actions of Jamie Vardy, in my opinion, was excellent. So for me, I think praise to Vardy. Then we had a pretty lengthy delay before because, I think the crowd were getting a bit frustrated by all accounts. The reality is that we've got the communication kit and the referee who's going to take over has to ensure that it's operating successfully, not only with his two assistant referees, but Philip Sharp, who a former World Cup assistant referee, was actually assessing this particular game. He had to come out the stands and he took over as fourth official. Now, in these situations, they've got to make certain that the electronics, the communication with Stockley Park is and between each other works. And I think there was a slight hiccup in that process.
I would have thought that the fourth official would run on to stop the game. I mean, he should be fully kitted out. He should have his whistles with him, or the assistant referees should also run on the pitch to indicate to the players stop the game. I would have thought that would have been rather than a player blowing the whistle. Nothing against it.
I think it was instinctive by Jamie Vardy, who was almost on it. He could see it, and he blew. And ultimately, at the end of the day, when you have potential head injuries, and I do mean head injuries, as I'm pleased that the players saw the possibility of the danger of that and the need to get someone on. And so I don't have a problem. Providing someone does stop the game immediately, then I'm not worried who blows the whistle. But you're quite right. This is, fourth official should carry the whistle. In fact, I've got to tell you, when I ran the line, I also carried a whistle.
Yeah, me too. I always went.
And people, people said why, and I said, well, I just do because that's what my colleagues did, and that's what my colleagues taught me in the past.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because on one occasion I was running the line. I can't remember the referee, but it was raining, and he had a pee in the whistle, and he stopped blowing. And so he came across and said, "I'll grab your whistle." He didn't even ask if I got one. He just grabbed it and away he went. Yeah.
I know. Yeah. Great question, Don. Thanks very much. Really great question. And it's something that can happen and could happen in the future. Yeah. I mean, the referees can get easily hit with the ball. It's easy to say that he was too close to the play or when I gets hit with the ball. It's always very easy to say things like that. But I do hope he's okay, the referee, and that he is fully recovered.
Yeah. And just on that point about whistles, I think when we're at grassroots level, we should always have a couple of whistles in our pocket with different tones, because you can, I can way back in the 60s, refereeing an important match on a Sunday morning with a pitch running alongside, and we both had a very similar whistle with a similar tone. And on, very quickly, I had my player stopping because the referee on the next pitch had blown the whistle. I know that's absolutely basic refereeing, but just carry a different tone whistle.
I've had that experience as well. Sunday morning games, and you get 3 or 4 pitches in close proximity, and the players don't know which whistle is coming from.
Yeah. Well, I think
what's annoying now, and becoming increasingly annoying to many people, and including to me and you, I'm sure, this increased acts of simulation, diving. You can call it simulation. It's a nice word, but it's blatant cheating. And when are the referees going to recognize it for what it is and deal with it? I know they're scared because of what happened to the players who can't remember the guy's name now, who took a heart attack or something, and then
Ericsson.
there was Ericsson, yeah, and so they're scared. But
yeah,
I really feel, Keith, that the players are taking advantage of that the referees will act and they should always act on the side of caution, but they're pushing it,
Yeah. I mean, there was an incident in one game this weekend, I'm sorry I can't name it, where there was an injury to a player and it was clearly a leg injury. And the referee, it wasn't a foul, the referee continued and they scored the goal. And the team were up in arms. And someone said to me this morning, what do you think of that? And I said, well, I think the referee's done the right thing. He's actually played on. There's no serious injury to the player. And so that judgment is right. There was also, I think, in the Newcastle game, it was the Newcastle game, where Willock of Newcastle went to ground and the referee awarded a penalty kick. And VAR came in and very clearly the referee went to the monitor. You could see that this was a dive. There was space between the players. Not always easy, in fairness, for the referee to detect, but VAR on this occasion did. And I applauded because the player was cautioned for his act of simulation. There's not enough of that going on. And I have to say that players over the years have got absolutely better at it. It's a little bit, the players don't make games easy for referees.
No, they don't. And I'm sure they're told to do it too as well. I'm sure they're told to do it.
Yeah. I mean, we know tactically that players are going down allegedly injured and rubbing their head, and the game is stopped, and then we see the water bottles come on and the tactical sort of advances of the training staff. I think that one of the things that I can say is that one of the areas where you've got to look at is the manufactured contact by the player who is attempting to deceive the referee. He knows that the defender stuck a leg out, so he's going to make contact, and he uses his leg as a hook, a trailing leg as a hook. And I think, look out for those. They're not easy to judge. You've got to have a bit of courage when you actually say that's an act of simulation. And sometimes they'll not scream and shout that they want a free kick because they've got better at it. They know that by shouting and screaming for a penalty kick, they're actually turning the referee against that decision. And so these are, if you like, in professional refereeing, you've got a lot of time to be able to discuss, analyze, and look. We've done that in the past. I've done that in the past. I even went to the managers' meetings and stood up with a series of clips. And I said, right, in this room, and there were people like Alex Ferguson and others, I'm going to show you a series of clips. I want you to judge whether you think it's a dive or not, an act of simulation or a proper penalty kick. We couldn't get cross agreement, of course. It showed. And I just said, it's dead simple. You found it difficult. We as referees find it difficult. 1 week, you're going to get a penalty kick, and the following week, you should have had a penalty kick and you've not got it. So I need your help. I need your training and technical expertise to stop this cheating. And it worked for a spell.
And because they're feathering their own nests and they're looking after their own interests. And if they,
of course, that's football, isn't it? And as you get more to the top, the bigger the sort of prizes are, and of course this can be managers losing jobs and all that goes with it.
Keith, once again, we've run out of time. There were so many more things we wanted to discuss, but thank you very much again for your time. We'll do it all again next Monday, please God. And thank you out there for looking and checking in and sending in your comments. just a quick more mention to Das in Bangladesh, because he looks in regularly and sends me comments all the time.
Yeah.
So thank you, Das, and sure Keith agrees with that. Till next Monday, same time, 8 o'clock. Good night and God bless. Thank you, Keith.
Thanks, Das.